Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us. This is Nomad Mobile Maintenance and Repair. Today we are working on a 2003, sorry about that, Hyundai Tiberon. I think these are super cool cars. They're an absolute Toyota Celica Street Fighter. This is a front wheel drive V6. I'm really glad that Hyundai corrected the mistake they made in the next generations with the Hyundai Genesis, which is a absolute gem of a vehicle, but I think these look cool nonetheless. Just some things we're going to go with while we're here looking at it. One of the things I want to mention, these tires all the way around, they're 2015s. They're pretty badly wore out. They're showing signs of wear, and they're a little bald on the inside edge, so it is something that I would recommend getting done. One of the other things that I want to mention, your brakes in the rear on the inside and on the outside, they're getting pretty low. The rotors as well are pretty well grooved and rusted over, so that is something that I would get replaced because there is not a lot amount of pad left. The rear shocks, I don't know if you can tell right there, but they're leaking in the rear, and that's going to be on both sides. So that is something that you may want to get replaced. You can kind of see that it's a little bit wet looking, and that's because it's leaking. Same thing with this brake pad. It is low and needing to be replaced. As we make our way up to the front, same thing. Front tires, they're pretty wore out. They're to the wear bars almost, about 4 or 3 seconds there. The front brake pads are worse. And then also that rotor is grooved, so I would recommend getting those brake pads and rotors replaced. Now, great news, it looks like those front shocks were replaced pretty recently, so that's a pretty positive note on this. Looks like both sides were done. But if we come over to the passenger side, this inner tie rod right over here, let's see if I can get a flashlight on it. You can kind of see the boots cracked, but there is some play in that inner, or that outer tie rod, my apologies. So I would recommend getting that outer tie rod replaced. Actually, we have the jack right here. Let's lift the vehicle up just a smidge, and we can maybe see that movement. It's not a whole lot, but it is something that I would recommend getting done. So if we look here, once again, I don't know how well that comes off in the video, but it does have some movement. But when we go underneath the vehicle, that's pretty dry. Honestly, I love the way that that looks. It looks like you maybe have the lower oil pans leaking a little bit, but nothing that I'm too concerned about. Or it could even be the oil filter is just dripping and then making its way around the oil pan. But honestly, it looks fantastic under here. Oh, and I forgot to mention for everyone, this is a manual. It's the right kind of vehicle. Absolutely fantastic. But the real reason why we are here today is the vehicle has a no start. Customer was driving it down the road, and all of a sudden it started to drive kind of funny. They pulled over, turned it off, let it sit for a little while. Then they went back out to it. It started, then they drove it home. They parked it. They tried to start it later. Wouldn't start. They just been sitting it out in their driveway, and they're thinking about selling it. But I think I have some fantastic news for them. What we found is a few issues. So we went to go plug in our scan tool, and the scan tool would not register, and that was because inside the vehicle there is a fuse, and it goes right there. That's going to be for the DLC connector. Looks like that fuse had burned out, so unfortunately we weren't able to get the DLC codes at the time. We replaced the fuse with one of the spares that's in the junction box, but we did notice when we were trying to crank the engine over, and I'm not going to crank it over because I've removed the problem suspect, but when we cranked it over, we noticed that there were no RPMs coming on the tach gauge, and that tells me that the engine's not seeing any rotation from the engine. There's a sensor called the crank position sensor, and what that does is it gives an idea to the PCM as to where the engine's at, and it needs that information to fire off and run correctly. So the crank position sensor is right there, but it was down all the way down there. You're not going to be able to see it too well without me maybe dropping my phone. I don't want to do that. But it's down in the engine, right next to the starter, right next to a hot exhaust. And a very common problem is that The way that this works is it has a little magnet inside, and that magnet allows it to pick up the crank, which has little teeth in it, and it makes a nice little sine wave. And the way that we diagnosed this was using the oscilloscope. And had I had a second person, I would have been able to show you that the waveform we had was erratic, not steady. They're supposed to be nice, smooth, sweeping, curved waves. They look fantastic. We saw that and we kind of knew immediately that that sensor was not putting out what it was supposed to. We checked the PCM side. We have 12 volts and a good signal wire and a good ground. But let's say you don't have an oscilloscope, you don't have a multimeter, you don't really know what you're doing, you've got this code, and you know, you could just replace the sensor, but you don't really want to just replace it without having a little bit of confidence. Well, a lot of these sensors are magnetic. So if you just take it and you try and stick it to a piece of metal, it should hold. I actually have a sensor with me, not one that would fit on this vehicle, but if we go over to the, did I leave it in the truck? I did. If we go over to the vehicle, this is getting to be a long video. It's gonna be my longest one yet. I'm just really excited about this diagnosis. I think it's a pretty fun thing to find. But if we come over to the truck and we grab my crank sensor. Now this is what I use for doing magnetic pickup on spark plug wires and other sensors that have that kind of magnetic induction. But if we go and take it, it sticks right there. It's a good sensor. This one,